Well, I tell y'all, good afternoon. uh, Israel is, they are bombarding their enemies right about now because I can't post these stories fast enough. Every time you turn around, I'm getting an alert that they have eliminated another Hezbollah leader, another Hamas leader. They're doing it on every side. They are attacking their enemies with full force, as Netanyahu vowed to do. So, the latest attack that I have is that they have killed 5 soldiers in Syria. They've attacked the Syrian military and they've killed 5 soldiers near the Lebanese border. So, yeah, but we all woke up to the news this morning that Nasrallah has been killed. Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, has been killed in Lebanon. Um, I think what happened is that the IDF couldn't officially confirm that he was dead because remember, they said like 400 people were buried in the rubble after the attack on the Hezbollah headquarters in Beirut. So they probably pulled him out of the rubble and confirmed that it was in fact him dead. But yeah, Hezbollah has also issued a statement confirming that Nasrallah is in fact dead, and they have vowed to avenge his death. Um, but yeah, he is confirmed dead. Both sides have confirmed that yes, the head of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is dead. He ran Hezbollah, I think they said, for over 30 years. And remember, I said yesterday that he was actually in a bunker or a command center that was underneath the headquarters. So they blew not only the buildings, the ground above ground, they blew up the buildings of the command center underground and killed him. So they also killed other leaders in that bombing of the Hezbollah headquarters. And like I said, it's 400 people, they said, still buried in the rubble that they have yet to recover. So I'm looking at the chain of command that I received off Telegram of Hezbollah. And so far, Israel has eliminated all of them except one. And he's probably buried underneath the rubble as well. They just probably haven't pulled his body out, but we'll see. But from what I'm looking, they've eliminated everybody on that chain of command but one. So Hezbollah is going to have to regroup. They said that after it's been confirmed that Nasrallah is dead, both Iran and Russia went into the huddle. And they're having emergency meetings, trying to figure out what their next game plan is. I'm quite sure they had a replacement for Nasrallah already in line just in case, he is killed in a strike. But yeah, they have been crippled. Hezbollah has been crippled with this latest attack. So yeah, but last night also, the IDF has attacked. They have eliminated Ahmad Muhammad Fahad, the head of a Hamas terrorist network in southern Syria. Now, he was responsible for leading attacks against Israeli troops and Israelis in southern Syria and Golan Heights. So, also, Iran has now begun to deploy troops. Yeah, they are now beginning to rally up the troops and send them to Lebanon and Syria in retaliation for Nasrallah's murder or death. Let's see. So Hezbollah has responded, to this attack in northern Israel and the West Bank, but Israel is so fortified. Their air defense system is so strong that they're not making too much of an impact. And so far, there have been no casualties. So last I checked, there are no casualties. They're doing damage. They're, damaging buildings and things like that and infrastructure. But for the most part, all of their attacks have been intercepted. The leader of Iran, the supreme, his name, Ayatollah Ali Khomeini has issued a public statement after the death of Nasrallah, vowing to retaliate. And so now Iran has stepped into the war as I predicted. And as we all knew, I didn't predict anything. We all knew that at the minute Hezbollah and Hamas is eliminated, then Iran steps in. And then Iran has now met with Russia. You know, they held an emergency meeting immediately after the announcement of the death of Nasrallah. So now Iran and Russia, they're holding meetings and they're trying to figure out their next game plan. So officially, Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini has, he's announced that Iran has entered into the battle. So, and Russia, they've pretty much met with Iran. So we could just, it's safe to assume that Russia will be entering into this war as well. This is World War III. It's all coming into fruition. It's Bible prophecy being fulfilled. This is World War III. So, yeah. So all sides are rallying the troops. The United States has deployed troops over to the Middle East in anticipation of the escalation of this war. So Iran has pledged their support to Hezbollah, and America continues to support Israel. So yeah, IDF has killed 5 soldiers in Damascus and took out a Hamas leader also in Syria. Putin continues to repeat his threats of nuclear retaliation. Excuse me. Putin has repeated threats of nuclear retaliation if Ukraine uses American-made weapons to strike targets inside of Russia. So they're saying they don't care if they're conventional weapons. Putin has said that if Ukraine uses any American-made weapons to attack targets inside of Russia, then Russia will respond with nuclear retaliation. So, but yeah, that's what's going on with the wars abroad. Over here in the States, 25,000 port workers are about to strike, and this will impact half of America's imports, from groceries to department stores from toilet paper to cars. It's going to affect the supply chain nationwide. And what's going to happen is if they strike for an extended period of time, we just won't receive products. We won't receive merchandise. And this will cause prices to increase to the consumers and product shortages. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the Longshoremen Union is about to go on strike because they want raises. Inflation is kicking everybody's butt, and these people want raises. And also they're concerned about AI taking their jobs. So they're going to walk out on the job in the upcoming days if their demands are not met. New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell will be indicted shortly in a bribery scheme. This is because an owner of Louisiana's largest building inspection company has been indicted on multiple felonies, 25 counts total. And this guy, obviously, he was in the business of bribing city officials to get what he wanted, to advance whatever needs of his company. He would bribe the mayor and other city government officials in New Orleans, and they included things such as he would give iPhones, expensive lunches and dinners, New Orleans Saints tickets, football tickets. They about to get indicted for some football tickets. iPhones and football tickets. I tell you. But anyway, this particular man has been indicted, and Mayor Cantrell, she is facing indictment because they had a scheme to where they terminated the job of a city deputy director of the city's safety and permits department because she was on to this defendant, this person, his last name is Farrell. She was on to him, and she was about to turn him in. She was sort of like a whistleblower. And so this defendant, Farrell, he bribed the mayor, called in a favor, and had the mayor remove this lady from her job. So now they took this woman's livelihood and ruined her life pretty much. And so now Mayor Cantrell and some of her top officials are about to reap what they sow. So now remember, I reported on the mayor of New York, Eric Adams. He's been indicted for bribery and receiving illegal campaign contributions from foreign entities. And now this mayor, LaToya Cantrell of New Orleans, is about to be indicted for accepting bribes from businesses in her city. And they said that her second in command was taking bribes too, so they'll more than likely be indicted with her. Um, yeah, so in false prophet news, the Catholic Church just settled another sexual abuse lawsuit for $323 million. It says the Catholic Diocese in New York will pay the money to 530 plaintiffs. These plaintiffs were sexually abused by clergy as children. And so this is not the one that I talked about in Louisiana. This is another diocese up in New York. The one in Louisiana, they were suing for over $1 billion. And the church only offered them $62 million to settle the suit, which is laughable. And that also had included over 500 plaintiffs. So yeah, this was in New York, and they are going to settle for $323 million for 530 plaintiffs. Also, with the Catholic Church in Peru, 10 people have been expelled by Pope Francis for sadistic abuses of power, authority, and spirituality. The Vatican determined that the founder of the Sororium of Christian Life group sodomized his recruits. Yeah. He sodomized him and 10 other people in this organization, sanctioned by the Catholic Church, sodomized their recruits. So the Vatican conducted an investigation. And not only did they sodomize and physically abuse these victims, they hacked victims' communications. Again, they physically abused them. So they included sadism and violence, sect-like abuses of conscience, spiritual abuse, abuses of authority, economic abuses in administering the church's money, and the abuse in the exercise of the apostolate of journalism, meaning that they attacked the journalists who criticized their movement on social media. So this demonic group has existed since 1971 and went unpunished by the Catholic Church up until now. Also, while on a visit in Belgium, Pope Francis was admonished by the King and Prime Minister and the rector of the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. They all confronted Pope Francis about the Vatican's lack of. Oh no! They flat out confronted him about the Vatican's negligent failure, malfeasance, and dereliction of duty for covering up sexual abuse by clergy. Pope Francis also met with 17 men and women who were molested by clergy as children. He met with 17 of these victims for 2 hours. And, these victims just said, they want action, they want reparation, and they want the church to do more to prevent these things from happening. So Pope Francis, he expressed remorse, begged for their forgiveness, because there have been more than 700 complaints of sexual abuse filed in Belgium alone. So he promised to do everything possible to make sure such abuses never happen again. We'll see. We'll see about that. Yeah. So there has been 2 earthquakes in Northern California. It says, Northern California had a 5.1 and a 4.6 earthquake That was either yesterday or the day before yesterday. So those were small trembles. Small trembles. They weren't very big, but that's in Northern Cali. They had been having them down in Southern California, but now the earthquakes are happening up north. So yeah, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to start it back over because I want to discuss something really serious with y'all about an earthquake in China. So hold on, give me a second. Okay, I'm back. Uh, so Israel has killed another senior Hezbollah official, Hassan Qasim. Hassan Khalil Yassin has been killed in another strike in Beirut. So Israel is not letting up. But the Bible said that that's what's going to happen, that Israel is going to be victorious against its enemies. So yeah, this throughout the day, they are just hitting every Hamas and Hezbollah official. But I said that they were going to wipe them completely out in preparation for a full-on war with Iran. So that's what's taking place right now. But no, this second part, I want to talk about China. China had a 3.8 magnitude earthquake on September 25th. Now, this is the third earthquake above 3 that the area has had in 2 weeks. So I want to be careful to explain this. This is the third earthquake above 3 in magnitude that the area has had in 2 weeks. The people claim to have observed strange earthquake clouds and a large flock of birds flying erratically as a warning sign of an impending earthquake. And if you guys, when you have time to go on YouTube and just do the research, or just go on Google and do the research, that every time an earthquake is about to happen, you'll see a large flock of birds just flying erratically, just hysterically all over the place right before that earthquake hits a certain area, any given area. And remember, I told y'all about that doomsday fish that washes up out of the ocean to shallow waters whenever an earthquake is about to happen. And that has been an accurate prediction every time. Just recently in California. And so now in China, with this earthquake that happened on the 25th, the people said they observed strange clouds in the sky and a flock of birds just flying erratically right before that earthquake hit. So, they consider this as a warning sign of an impending earthquake, but scientists dismiss their claims and say that, it's just a coincidence. Like they said about the doomsday fish. They said, oh, that's just a coincidence. Whatever. Scientists, a lot of them, half of them, they don't believe in God anyway, so that's why they say these things. So, what these things, when these signs appear, they are known as harbingers. And so I looked up the definition of harbinger because a harbinger is mentioned in the Bible. And so a harbinger, according to the Webster's Dictionary, is a person or thing that foreshadows a future event. A harbinger gives a sign of what is to come. It is a warning or prediction of a future event or occurrence. Like, for example, in the Bible, the four horsemen are harbingers of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, no, the four horsemen is a harbinger of the end times. And the end times and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So, yeah, harbingers are all in the Bible, and the harbinger is mentioned in the Bible. The Star of Jacob that is to appear this weekend is a harbinger of the Messiah coming to earth, as mentioned in Numbers 24, chapter 24, verse 17. The dove is a harbinger of peace. Well, it was a harbinger of peace to Noah in Genesis chapter 8, verses 8 through 10. In Isaiah chapter 52, verse 7, John the Baptist was a harbinger for Jesus Christ's first coming. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 5 through 8, tells us about the harbingers that will usher in the approaching of the end time. These are the things that we are experiencing today. With the war, with the famine, with the wickedness that's going on around us everywhere, the pestilences in the world, the four horsemen. What does the four horsemen represent? War, famine, death, pestilence, and famine. Those are the four horsemen. Those are harbingers. And Timothy, so does the book of Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 9. And Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. And finally, the book of Revelations is full of harbingers. So a lot of people, scientists, atheists, agnostics, people with no religion, no spirituality, they don't believe it. People don't believe it. And the only thing we can do is just warn people. But those are harbingers. And I'm telling you, this Star of Jacob that's supposed to appear today, if not tomorrow, the Star of Jacob that's going to appear is a harbinger of the Messiah coming to earth. Also, we are going to get a second moon tomorrow. Now, the second moon, they say, is an asteroid that has been pulled into the Earth's gravitational pull or whatever. It's a small asteroid. And they said that this second moon, they call it the mini moon or space rock, is going to appear in the Earth, and it's going to be here for at least 2 months. So this moon is going to be in the sky. It's going to be like 2 moons in the sky until the first of the year. Or it could be longer. We don't know. But that moon is set to appear tomorrow. Now, the Star of Jacob was set to appear today. It's going to appear on the earth either today or tomorrow. And that is a sign, according to the Jewish religion, that that is the coming of the Messiah. But in Christianity, that is the second coming of the Messiah when the Star of Jacob appears in the sky. So be on the lookout, be watchful. And like I said, if you don't believe me, then do the research yourself. That's why I post the news clips, because I want people to actually see, where I'm getting my information, and to also go and do the research for yourself so you'll know that this stuff is serious. And if you don't get saved before Jesus Christ comes, then your soul will be damned to hell for eternity. There is no coming back from that. So people, I'll just tell you, you can play around with this, you can procrastinate, you can put it off all you want. But once Jesus is coming from, out of those clouds and he's descending from the sky, he's coming for war, he's coming as a lion, and he's coming to collect his church. And if you are not written in the Lamb's book of life, you will be thrown into the lake of fire for eternity, along with Satan, his demons, and everybody who rejected God and Jesus Christ as his only begotten son. So, all right, y'all. This is what I have for today so far, but the news just keeps rolling in. I'll probably be back later on tonight with something else as, the stories, are published. So, all right, y'all. Peace and have a blessed day.
Breaking overnight, the Israeli military has eliminated its most powerful target yet. Israel says longtime Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah was killed in an airstrike in Beirut. Hezbollah is now confirming that Nasrallah was killed. The Israeli military said Nasrallah was at Hezbollah's underground headquarters, one of several sites targeted in a series of massive explosions that the Lebanese health ministry says killed at least 6 and injured more than 90 others. The killing of Nasrallah not only strikes a blow to terrorist group's leadership, but could also trigger a wider war with Hezbollah's main backer, Iran. Imtiaz Tayeb has the latest from Beirut.
In a massive escalation, Israeli fighter jets dropped a series of bombs on Beirut's southern suburbs, triggering deafening explosions and sending huge plumes of crimson smoke in the skies above. On the ground, near total devastation, at least 4 buildings pulverized. Israel's military says it killed Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and this morning the group confirmed he was dead. Syed Hassan Nasrallah was a singular figure within the political and paramilitary force. Known for his fiery speeches, like this one we attended in August. For 32 years, he led Hezbollah, which means Party of God, and is considered a terrorist organization by the US and many other countries. And through support from Iran, he expanded it not only into a political force,
Hezbollah, which means Party of God, and which is considered a terrorist organization by the US and many other countries. Through support from Iran, he expanded it not only into a political force, but also one of the most powerful and heavily armed standing armies in the region. Nasrallah's death would be a potentially catastrophic blow for the group. Several of Hezbollah's military commanders have been assassinated in other Israeli strikes since July. And thousands of its members were injured in booby-trap pager and walkie-talkie explosions earlier this month, leaving it badly diminished and potentially leaderless. The stunning developments follow Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the UN General Assembly, where he received a mix of boos and applause.
And will continue degrading Hezbollah until all our objectives are met.
Overnight, Israeli warplanes targeted even more areas across Beirut's southern suburbs, reportedly carrying out at least 20 strikes before dawn.
Now, President Biden and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin have both denied being given advance warning from Israel of the massive strikes targeting Nasrallah, with Secretary Austin saying the first time he was told about it was while the strikes were actually happening, as the White House now instructs the Pentagon to, quote, assess and adjust U.S. forces across the Middle East as needed. Jeff.
Imtiaz, thank you.
We can now bring in our reporter Claire Pacala, who's standing by in Jerusalem. Thanks for joining us, Claire. You've been following air raid alerts from Israeli authorities. What have they been telling you?
Dozens of air raids alerts coming through just in the last minute on our mobile phones. Over the last hour, we've had dozens and dozens of alerts, several towns across northern Israel, as well as in the northern occupied West Bank. So anyone who gets an alert on their phone and who's in one of those communities needs to get to an air raid shelter as soon as possible. This looks like the beginning of Hezbollah's response, rocket attacks aimed at communities. Now, some of those rockets are intercepted by Israel's air defense system, but that does create shrapnel, which falls to the ground and can create injuries and impact buildings. And we did say damage in Safed and the Upper Galilee during the night. We've not had any reports of anyone being killed there, but we saw images of buildings on fire, significant damage to some homes in Safed. So this is the beginning of Hezbollah's response. And of course, many people are now here thinking on this Saturday that they need to be close to an air raid shelter, not just in northern Israel, but also in central and southern Israel too. People now are keeping their mobile phones close to them, making sure they can hear those alerts when they go off and that they know where an air raid shelter is if they need to get to one.
And Claire, what are the chances that Israel's bombardment of Lebanon overnight is a precursor to a potential ground operation?
For all week, we've heard a back and forth about potential ground operation. We heard that the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, had moved troops up to the border with Lebanon and maneuvered them, put them into combat positions ready for a potential ground operation. Now, Israel does have superiority in the skies, but on the ground it's a different matter, and moving Israeli troops into southern Lebanon to fight Hezbollah is another story. They'd be moving into their enemy territory. They'd be moving into a hostile ground. Hezbollah would, to an extent, have the upper hand because they would be the defenders. Now, of course, Israel has significantly degraded Hezbollah in the last week, particularly during these bombing campaigns that we've seen in Lebanon and clearly in Beirut overnight, but also the pager and the walkie-talkie attacks that we saw last week. And over the last several months, Israel has been taking out the top brass of Hezbollah leadership one by one in what has been clear military and intelligence successes. But moving in and carrying out a ground operation is another story, and there's a question mark over that. And of course, many Israelis are concerned about the risk to their troops, the risk of their troops getting taken hostage or being killed in a ground operation against Hezbollah. Of course, we heard Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, very clearly saying at the UN General Assembly on Friday that absolute victory was the goal, and he said that Israel is winning. What exactly does absolute victory mean? How far would Hezbollah fighters need to be pushed back into Lebanon? What does it mean to say Hezbollah needs to be defeated? That is the question. But there's still a question mark, though, over whether or not a ground operation could be launched by Israel in the coming days.
Thank you, Claire. That's Claire Pacalin for us in Jerusalem.
As Israel continues to strike Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, Iran's supreme leader said the militant group would not be defeated this way.
They martyred some effective and precious members of Hezbollah. This damaged Hezbollah, no doubt, but not enough to bring Hezbollah to its knees. Hezbollah's organizational and human structure is much too strong to be broken with such things.
Despite being the militant group's key backer, Iran has so far resisted being dragged into the escalating violence between Hezbollah and Israel, with Lebanon experiencing its deadliest day in decades on Monday. At the UN General Assembly on Tuesday, Iran's new president took aim at Israel, but refrained from threatening it directly, instead appealing to the international community.
We condemn Israeli crimes against humanity. It is imperative that the international community should immediately stop the violence and bring about a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and bring an end to the desperate barbarism of Israel in Lebanon before it engulfs the region and the world.
Hezbollah was established with the help of Iran following Israel's 1982 invasion and occupation of Lebanon. It eventually forced Israel to withdraw following an 18-year-long insurgency. But Iran now seems determined to avoid an all-out war.
The Iranians have shown, just by virtue of their behavior since October 7th, that they don't want to get involved in a direct war of their own for the most part. Hezbollah did get involved on a, let's say, a mid-level of hostilities, but Iran has stayed out consistently.
For the time being, Iran has not retaliated against the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh on its soil in July, which was blamed on Israel.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East. Far from being lambs led to the slaughter, Israel's soldiers have fought back with incredible courage and with heroic sacrifice. And I have another message for this assembly and for the world outside this hall. We are winning.
Also breaking news coming in from Tehran now, where Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has called on Muslims to stand by the people of Lebanon and the proud Hezbollah with whatever means they have and assist them in confronting Israel. Khamenei, who has been moved to a secure location amid tight security after the news of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah's death started circulating. He warned that the fate of this region will be determined by the forces of resistance, with Hezbollah at the forefront. He called on the axis of resistance, Iran-aligned armed groups across West Asia that have targeted Israel and its ally, the US, to stand with the Hezbollah. According to reports, Iran is in constant contact with Lebanon's Hezbollah and other regional proxy groups to determine the next step after Israel announced that it had killed Nasrallah in a strike on south of Beirut. Iran's foreign ministry says that the path of Hezbollah's chief Hassan Nasrallah will continue despite his killing. We are now joined by a special guest on the broadcast, Scott Lucas, who is a professor of international politics, Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Scott, what does Nasrallah's death really mean for Hezbollah here and its backer, Iran?
The assassination of Hassan Nasrallah is a serious blow to Hezbollah, from which it will take some time to recover. It's an important symbolic blow. You know, Nasrallah was the overall head of Hezbollah's political operations, its links with other groups, and its military operations. He had been that leader for more than 30 years, ever since he was 35 years old and rose to power in the 1990s. There is no single Hezbollah figure who can replace him at this point. But I think equally important, although it is not in the headlines, is that almost every significant Hezbollah military commander has been assassinated in recent weeks by Israel. So they haven't just taken out Nasrallah, they've taken out almost all of the senior leadership of Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah will replace these leaders, it will reach into its ranks and promote folks, but of course, they don't have the experience yet. They don't have the experience that Nasrallah and others had. And in addition, you're not just talking about personnel who have been killed. Hezbollah's entire communications have been ripped apart with the pager and the walkie-talkie attacks that were only 2 weeks ago. Hezbollah will not disappear. Iran will not disappear in supporting it. But right now, Hezbollah and the Iranian regime are very much on the defensive, and they have very few options apart from, I think, what would be the very risky approach of firing missiles directly on Israel.
With Nasrallah having been taken out, what shape do you think Israel's attacks take now?
I think Israel continues the airstrikes across Lebanon. They continue to hit Hezbollah positions. They continue to try to assassinate any leaders who do remain at this point. I don't think Israel will carry out the ground invasion, which was threatened by the head of its defense forces. I think that all along, the plan was here, we don't have to carry out that ground invasion to really degrade Hezbollah. I think the problem now, the problem first and foremost for the Lebanese people, but it'll be a problem for Israel as well, is that Lebanon quite likely is going to be on the point of collapse. This was a country that was already economically paralyzed. It had serious political difficulties. It's a very deeply divided country. And, you know, you could see a country go into chaos. Israel, I don't think, can risk sending in ground forces because they will get bogged down as an occupying force in a country which could go back to the disorder that we saw in Lebanon a generation ago, when, remember, it was in the midst of a very deadly civil war.
Scott, you just spoke about the pager attacks, and you also spoke about Nasrallah having been taken out. This begets the question, like, would you say that it was perhaps redundant, the pager attacks, considering Israel did have the firepower to actually take Nasrallah out?
You know, the pager attacks were the first stage of what culminated yesterday with the assassination of Nasrallah. And remember, the killing of a lot of civilians in those buildings that were struck. The reason why the pager attacks were part of this is that what you have done is that you have broken Hezbollah's communications. They had stopped using cell phones because those were vulnerable. They had moved to pagers. Then walkie-talkies were hit the next day. So the only way that Hezbollah leaders can really communicate with each other as they are in a war with Israel is to try to meet face-to-face. And of course, when they met face to face, as they did yesterday, in that Beirut headquarters, Israel struck.
What does it say about Israel's aim and about the impact on ceasefire talks?
There will be no ceasefire talks. I mean, let's be realistic here, because there were two aims that will continue that also bring in Gaza. The first aim was very much a personal one for Benjamin Netanyahu. His open-ended war in Gaza was in trouble. You have more than 100 Israeli hostages, dead or alive, still held by Hamas. You have the Israeli military bombing and killing almost 42,000 people, but Hamas is still there. And Netanyahu was facing hundreds of thousands of Israelis who were protesting, who were saying, get our hostages back. And he didn't have an answer for that. He was facing division with his own military, who said, you cannot destroy Hamas. So what does Netanyahu do? He says, let's open up a new front on Lebanon. And when he did that, the second aim comes in, that for years the Israeli military had made plans for an all-out effort to try to destroy Hezbollah. And when Netanyahu made the decision, this is the time to do it, that repaired the rift. It brought him and the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, together. So they have not only damaged Hezbollah, for now it has given Netanyahu the breathing space to continue with operations in Lebanon and in Gaza.
Perhaps a little premature to talk about Iran's reaction here. However, Scott, we're going to have to take it, we'll have to end our chat here. And thank you so much for your opinions and your updates on this.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
I wanted to express our condolences and solidarity with Lebanese people, and we'll be, of course, very interested to get your assessments. I wanted to express our condolences and solidarity with Lebanese people, and we'll be, of course, very interested to get your assessments.
I wanted to come and brief you of what's happening on our
It's another warning, yet another nuclear warning from Vladimir Putin to the West. But this one is more specific than previous ones, though. So as President Zelensky was addressing the UN, President Putin here was addressing his Security Council about changing Russia's nuclear doctrine, which is the document that defines when and how Russia could use nuclear weapons. Currently, it states that they can be used if the security of the state is at risk, which is quite a nebulous concept, of course. Now Vladimir Putin has said he wants to change that and be more specific so that to allow Russia to respond with nukes to an attack by any state using conventional weapons. So, for example, drones, missiles and aircraft. And that's not all. He also said that Moscow would consider any assault from a non-nuclear power that's supported by a nuclear power to be a joint attack. And you don't have to be a military genius to understand that he was referring there to Ukraine being supported by NATO. It was a very thinly veiled warning indeed. So why is he saying this now? It's all a response to this issue being mulled by the UK and the US still over whether or not to allow Ukraine to use Western weapons to strike deeper inside Russia. They still haven't reached an agreement on that. Russia is trying to redefine its red lines, which I think have become a bit blurred of late because previous threats from the Kremlin haven't been followed through on. For example, the West has supplied missiles, tanks and aircraft, F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine without any consequence from the Kremlin, despite the threat of retaliation. And there have been so many nuclear threats, loose nuclear threats from the Kremlin of late, that I think there's a sense they've started to lose their impact, started to lose their meaning. So this, I think, is an attempt to redefine these threats, be more specific, be more defined and be more tangible. But the fundamental question remains, and that is this another bluff from Vladimir Putin, or is it for real?
$323 million. That's how much the Catholic Church in New York will have to pay up. Why? For sexually abusing 530 children. This is a historic settlement, and it is casting a shadow over the Pope's rare visit to Europe. Pope Francis is in Belgium, another country rattled by the clergy's sex abuse scandals. Their Prime Minister is demanding justice. He says the Church has been involved in cover-ups. So no matter where the Pope goes, no matter how much he tries to rally support amid Christianity's declining numbers, he cannot escape the Church's dark past and its stories of sexual abuse, often involving children. The question is, will he do something about it? Here's a report.
A Catholic diocese in New York is going bankrupt. A diocese is a group of churches under the control of a bishop. And this bankruptcy will be the largest for any US diocese. Why? Because they'll have to pay more than $323 million to about 530 survivors who were sexually abused by priests when they were children. While this is a historic win for the survivors, despite the big payout, the Church is in hot water over its dark history of sex abuse. This case is casting a shadow over the Pope's latest tour. The 87-year-old Pope Francis is on a rare tour of Europe. Yesterday he was in Luxembourg, and today he's in Belgium. While he has arrived to spread a message of peace amid ongoing wars and encourage the dwindling Catholic flock, his visit to Belgium has witnessed a blistering start. Just as the King and Prime Minister welcomed the Pope, they blasted the Church's legacy of sex abuse.
Terrible suffering was inflicted on children, which they will carry for the rest of their lives. It has taken far too long for their cries for help to be heard or recognized.
Het heeft zo lang geduurd voor hun noodkreten werden gehoord.
Maar wanneer iets misgaat, dan kunnen...
There should be justice, but when something goes wrong, we cannot accept a cover-up. Today, therefore, words are not enough. Concrete steps must be taken.
Niet alleen woorden.
What's behind this anger? A documentary. Last year, a TV documentary was released, and it laid bare the historical sex abuse by Catholic clergy in Belgium. People shared traumatic experiences of being assaulted. The Church's cover-ups were exposed. and this sparked widespread public outrage. Now, a year after the documentary aired, the Pope himself is in Belgium. He has arrived for a mega mass, and he's meeting with 15 victims of clerical abuse. It's his first visit in 30 years, and it's being received as too little too late damage control. Some people are excited about the Pope's arrival, but many are not. Several parliamentary leaders have boycotted a meeting with the Pope, and the Prime Minister is demanding action. But so far, this is what the Pope has been able to offer.
Brothers and sisters, in this regard, this is a shame that we have to take in our hands, ask for forgiveness, and solve the problem. The shame of abuse, of child abuse.
The forgiveness won't come easily. Over the past few months, the Pope has visited one continent after another. Earlier this month, he was on a rare visit to the Asia-Pacific region. Among many countries, he visited Timor-Leste, where his mass was attended by more than 600,000 people. All while previous child sex abuse scandals of the clergy hung over his visit. The Pope is touring the world to rally support. But wherever he goes, the shadow of sex abuse across nations follows him, and he can't escape it until his words are followed by accountability and action.
The Vatican has expelled the lay founder of the Peruvian Sodalicium religious movement, Luis Fernando Figari. This is the result of an investigation the Pope entrusted to 2 members of the Doctrine of the Faith in 2023, the Archbishop of Malta, Charles Scicluna, and Father Jordi Bertomeu. Pope Francis had sent them to Peru to analyze Figari's case, where he was accused of sexual abuse. The current superior of the community, Jose David Correa, had asked the Vatican in 2019 to open a canonical process to expel the founder. After the investigation ended, the Vatican issued this statement signed by Pope Francis, officially expelling Figari from the organization. Their grounds for his dismissal are as follows: incompatible and therefore unacceptable circumstances in a member of an institution of the Church, cause of scandal and grave harm to the good of the Church and of individual members of the faithful. The Sodalicium movement expressed its acceptance of the Pope's decision, and therefore Figari is no longer part of the community. This measure is a gesture of pastoral charity, justice, and reconciliation within our community and with all those who have been affected by the abuses committed by Mr. Figari. We express our gratitude with filial adhesion as part of the path of renewal that our community has been following for several years, with the guidance and company of the Holy See. This case began in 2011 when Sodalicium began receiving allegations of abuse. But it wasn't until 2015 that the scandal made headlines, following the publication of the book, Half Monks, Half Soldiers, by Pedro Salinas and Paula Ugaz. The following year, in 2016, the then Superior General condemned the founder of Sodalicium with these words: "In light of the testimony presented, we find citizen Luis Fernando Figari guilty of the abuses he has been accused of and declare him unwelcome in our organization, which completely deplores and condemns his behavior. Sodalicium is a society of lay apostolic life. Born in Peru, it was approved by Pope John Paul II in 1997.
One day, while I was being raped in my room, one of the priests opened the door and all he could say was, "You should already be in the refectory to eat."
Koen was only 13 years old when he endured this terrible abuse at the school of the Abbey of Dendermonde in Belgium. He suffered sexual violence that subsequently forced him to undergo several urogenital operations in order to live a normal life. recognized by the church as a Category 4 victim, the one reserved for the most serious abuse, Kuhn received 10,000 euros in compensation. But that's not enough to cover the costs of the long therapy that he needs. When he meets the Pope, this is the point he wants to stress.
What I am going to ask him, almost demand, is that, firstly, the perpetrators of violence be punished much more severely. Secondly, I'm going to ask him to finally force the Belgian bishops to take immediate measures. They have already made payments in the past, but it was only alms.
Like Kuhn, 80 victims have expressed the wish to meet the pontiff, but only about 15 will be able to speak with him when he comes to Belgium. The selection was made by the church itself, much to the dismay of Mark. He was touched by the priest who officiated in this church, but he will not meet the Pope.
Why make all this selection? It brings back the feeling that we're trying to cover up. We're trying to say nothing.
Those suspicions have been rejected by the Belgian Catholic Church, which has for 10 years been saying it is facing up to its responsibilities.
Today we are no longer hiding anything. On the contrary, things are coming to light. There are people who have been receiving for years, have been supported, have received some form of compensation.
Since 2012, more than 700 complaints involving the church have been filed in Belgium.
Well, talks have stalled and time is running out to avoid a strike at ports like ours right across the country.
And as Tan Trung reports, it could lead to shortages and supply chain issues, making it hard to buy the things you need.
The International Longshoremen's Association, which represents 85,000 workers at ports along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts, including 700 at the Port of New Orleans, is planning to strike next week. In a recent YouTube video, the ILA's president described what he believes will happen when his members go on strike.
First week, be all over the news every night, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars because the cars ain't coming in off the ships.
Since June, contract talks have been frozen between the ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance, which represents terminal operators. The union is demanding better wages and guarantees ports will not fully automate their operations. Henry Glover is a president of a local chapter of the ILA.
And they're trying to get robots and stuff to do our jobs and put us out of business.
The ILA says tens of thousands of members are prepared to go on strike. That includes 700 at the Port of New Orleans. Longshoremen say without their presence at the docks, people should brace for shortages and supply chain issues.
From cars to toilet paper to different chemicals, everything is shipped over to the United States. We unload them.
UNO economics professor Ali Bustamante says potential impacts from the strike depend on how long it could last.
When we think about just a strike of 1 or 2 weeks, it's very nominal in the context of it's not going to impact consumer prices significantly. But when we're talking about a strike that looms a month or longer, then you're talking about substantial costs to consumers.
The Port of New Orleans has been avoiding interviews during the labor negotiations, but in a statement, the port says it's always maintained a good working relationship with ILA members. That said, it is preparing for a potential work stoppage on October 1st. The White House is urging both sides to resume talks, but only days remain. Tan Trung, Fox 8, Local First.
Local longshoremen say that if a deal isn't reached, they'll begin picketing on Tuesday morning.
A former building inspector in New Orleans has been indicted on multiple federal charges.
And there's an alleged connection at the top of City Hall. WGN's Rick Gogrieve is here to tell us more. Rick.
Yes, Susie and Kurt, this is the second felony case we've seen recently with potential connections to Mayor LaToya Cantrell. Now legal experts say it's only a matter of time before the feds close in on her. Mayor LaToya Cantrell appears to be once again in the federal government's crosshairs. Former city inspector Randy Farrell has been indicted in a case that appears to be heavily connected to her. According to the indictment, Farrell is accused of bribing public official number 1, who is believed to be Mayor Cantrell, in order to get her to fire a city employee. Those alleged bribes include Saints tickets, an iPhone, and a meal at a steakhouse.
For someone to receive something of value and then public official 1 to therefore do something using her position, that is corruption.
According to the indictment, Farrell wanted this employee fired because she had reported an alleged scheme in the Department of Safety and Permits, where Farrell worked at the time.
Farrell was soliciting, accepting bribes and kickbacks to apply for and receive permits in the name of licensed electricians and caused the submission of fraudulent inspection reports knowing, they were not performed by licensed electricians.
Now, Farrell is facing 25 federal charges and faces up to 20 years in prison for each. However, WGNO legal analyst Cliff Cardone says a plea deal for Farrell is potentially in play.
Well, I think this is going to provide Mr. Farrell an opportunity to possibly turn state's evidence against the mayor. She is public figure number one, so I presume that's her. I think he would have that opportunity to turn state's evidence against her.
Cardone now believes an indictment against Mayor Cantrell may be just a couple of months away.
She's in serious jeopardy. The federal prosecutors don't put that in indictments unless they are serious about potentially indicting public official number one.
Now, the city released a statement on the matter earlier this evening saying, out of the respect for the courts and the legal process, we will reserve comment on this matter until its full conclusion.
Harbinger. A person or thing that foreshadows or foretells the coming of someone or something. One who provides lodgings, especially the officer of the English royal household who formerly preceded the court when traveling, to provide and prepare lodgings. Harbinger synonyms: forewarning, herald, omen, premonition, sign, signal, prophet. Harbinger. Harbinger.
On September 25, 2024, at 7:29 p.m., a 3.8 magnitude earthquake struck Pudong County in Hefei City, Anhui Province, with a focal depth of 12 kilometers, according to official measurements by the China Earthquake Network Center. Although this earthquake wasn't particularly strong, it has drawn widespread public attention due to the fact that it marks the third earthquake of magnitude 3 or above in Pudong within the last 2 weeks. In total, 5 earthquakes have hit the region this year, causing local residents to grow increasingly uneasy about the ongoing seismic activity. The earthquake's occurrence also set off a wave of speculation and anxiety among the local population. Prior to the quake, some residents had posted videos on social media, claiming to have witnessed unusual natural phenomena. They reported seeing so-called earthquake clouds in the sky and observing large flocks of birds flying erratically. These videos quickly spread online, fueling fears that these strange occurrences were warning signs of an impending earthquake. In an attempt to quell the growing panic, the Hefei Earthquake Bureau issued an official statement, denying any connection between the bird's behavior and the earthquake. They explained that these were purely coincidental natural phenomena, and urged the public not to overinterpret these events. However, just hours after this denial, the earthquake struck, further intensifying the public's apprehension. The timing led some to question the accuracy of official statements, contributing to a growing sense of distrust and uncertainty among the population.
信息转换，你将听到一篇短文。
In the aftermath of the earthquake, many residents took precautionary measures, despite the relatively mild shaking. Video footage shared on social media showed large numbers of people setting up tents in public parks, choosing to stay outdoors out of fear of potential aftershocks. Many of them expressed their heightened anxiety due to the frequent seismic activity in recent weeks. One resident noted that while the tremors were not particularly strong this time, the psychological toll of experiencing multiple earthquakes in such a short period had caused many people to feel on edge. Another point of contention among residents was the lack of an earthquake early warning. Many people were alarmed that they did not receive any alert prior to the tremors. This led to questions about the reliability of China's earthquake early warning system.
9月25号，刚刚解除1级警报，然后今天晚上又来一场地震，全跑出来了。
In response to these concerns, the China Earthquake Network Center clarified that their early warning system only triggers for earthquakes of magnitude 4.0 and above. Since this earthquake was below that threshold, no warning was issued. While this explanation was technically correct, it didn't entirely assuage public concerns. Some residents called for improvements to the system, suggesting that it should include alerts for even smaller tremors, given the frequency of seismic activity in their region.
来，所谓的专家不是说没那个吗？怎么今晚又来了？又来地震了？
In addition to Hefei, the earthquake was felt in surrounding areas, including Chuzhou, Wuhu, Fuyang, and parts of Nanjing in neighboring Jiangsu province. Despite the widespread tremors, there have been no reports of casualties or significant damage to buildings or infrastructure at this time. Local authorities are continuing to assess the situation, and additional inspections are being carried out in critical areas, such as schools, hospitals, and residential buildings, to ensure that no latent structural damage poses a risk to public safety. Though the earthquake itself did not result in physical destruction, its psychological impact on the community is becoming increasingly evident. People are on high alert, and there is a growing fear that these smaller quakes may be precursors to something more serious. As investigations into the earthquake continue, experts from the China Earthquake Network Center and other relevant agencies will likely focus on studying the underlying causes of the increased seismic activity in the region. Understanding whether these earthquakes are isolated incidents or part of a broader geological pattern will be crucial in determining future risks.
Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday night. It is your Earthmaster out here about 8:30 p.m. California time here. Friday, September 27, 2024. We got some earthquake activity here into the Gorda Ridges. Looks like a little small swarm of earthquake activity. 5.1, and then a couple minutes later here, we got a 4.6 stirring up out here across the Gorda Ridges area. This is a slippage or a separation here, divergent boundary activity. Notice the oceanic crust there slowly being formed as we get that separation of the two plates occurring. That activity is at the southern end of the Gorda Ridges. Got to watch this area around Northern California here, the southern end of the Cascadia. That could amplify the potential for some larger earthquake activity out here in this region. 5.1 earthquake is noted, 6 miles deep. Wow, it looks like they put out a little aftershock forecast here, something new they've done in determining or forecasting earthquakes. 3+, yeah, that's a little interesting there. 47%, M4, 12%, but no one really knows specifically, right, if there's going to be an aftershock or if this is maybe something bigger. These are just small percentages that they normally use for any given fault, any given earthquake out here across California. But yeah, 5.1 and a 4.6 earthquake. Now, let me see here. Where is Petrolia? Petrolia didn't pick it up. Looks like Parkfield maybe did. Hard to say here. This was about 25 minutes or so ago, so I didn't see this coming in. I was right in the middle of making my video here for the Palo Verdes observation that I performed yesterday down there, documenting some activity on the landslide. So that's just about finalized. I'm going to upload that here in a little bit, but first I wanted to give a little update here on some earthquake activity. 5.1 earthquake and a 4.6. It's been relatively quiet out here across Northern California. That may not be the case here, so we'll definitely keep an eye on it. All right, look for that video, folks. It's coming up here tonight. Got to upload it, and it'll be published here on the channel. So my Palos Verdes area landslide video documentation. We'll catch you guys out here a little bit later on. Stay safe, folks.
Could Earth really be getting a second moon? Yes, you heard that right. NASA scientists have calculated that on Sunday, September 29th, our planet will capture a mini-moon in the form of a tiny asteroid called 2024 PT5. All right, let's get into it. So, what is 2024 PT5? This asteroid is a tiny rock, no bigger than a bus, that normally orbits the Sun as part of a small asteroid belt near Earth. But something rare is about to happen. Due to the complex dance of gravity between the Sun and Earth, on September 29th, this asteroid will fall under the influence of Earth's gravity and become a temporary second moon. Imagine this. For a brief moment, Earth will be pulling this asteroid into a short-lived orbit. NASA's cutting-edge calculations show that the asteroid will likely orbit Earth for a few months before breaking free and continuing its journey around the Sun. Let's put this in perspective. Our natural moon is over 3,400 kilometers in diameter. In comparison, 2024 PT5 is minuscule, less than 20 meters wide. It's like comparing a soccer ball to a grain of sand. But don't be fooled by its size. This event is rare and offers NASA an exciting opportunity to study objects like these close to Earth. NASA has been preparing for this event for months. Scientists are using highly advanced telescopes to track the asteroid's approach. They are keen to learn how Earth's gravity affects small objects, knowledge that could one day help us defend the planet against potential asteroid threats. These temporary moons give us the perfect opportunity to practice. And believe it or not, this isn't the first time Earth has captured a mini-moon. Back in 2020, Earth briefly hosted another asteroid, 2020 CD3, for a few months. However, 2024 PT5 is unique because it follows a more predictable orbital path, meaning NASA has a chance to study it in great detail. But don't get too attached to this second moon. it won't be sticking around forever. After a few orbits, 2024 PT-5 will be flung back into space by Earth's gravitational forces, continuing its journey around the Sun. Scientists predict this whole mini-moon experience will last only a few months. So why does NASA care so much about these tiny, short-lived moons? It's all part of a larger mission. Understanding how asteroids like 2024 PT-5 behave helps NASA plan for future asteroid deflection missions. If a large asteroid ever threatens Earth, the knowledge we gain now could help us save the planet. On Sunday, September 29th, we'll witness something truly rare. Earth, for a short period, will have 2 moons in its sky. It's a cosmic event that's worth every bit of excitement. But this mini-moon won't last forever. Before long, it will return to its journey around the Sun, and Earth will once again be a one-moon planet. Don't miss out on this incredible moment. And remember, stay curious and hit that subscribe button. We'll keep bringing you the latest and greatest from the world of space science and beyond, right here on Tech Universe.